Hi everybody, I am Baldy Build Cities and today we're going to be starting a new game. We're going to be starting on the normal difficulty. I generally find it's a little bit more challenging, a little bit more engaging, and I like the added challenge associated with it. We're going to play on the Coos Bay, Oregon map. This is mapped by Poplar Ponderosa. It's really phenomenal, got lots of cool and interesting terrain, and the highways aren't too overdeveloped, which I really enjoy. We're going to wait to name the city for now, but we're going to leave the game mode normal, like I said. We're going to leave natural disasters on, and we're not going to turn on unlock all, unlimited money, or unlock map tiles. So I loaded into this map before I started recording, and I wanted to point out a few things that I found interesting. First of all, like I mentioned, I really like the fact that the roads going through this map are just two-lane highways. They're not overdeveloped four-lane divided interstates like we see in many parts of the country. I really like the fact that I'm going to get to place those on my own. I think it adds some additional intrigue. Additionally, you can see that we have a rail line running right through the middle of our starting tiles. That'll give us a good area to start out with our transit hub. You can also see that there's a fair amount of difference in terrain. From the ground level, you can see that there are some significant hills and mountains here. Looking at natural resources, you can see that we do have a fair amount of fertile land, and there are plenty of trees and lots of ore deposits scattered throughout the map. We're going to take advantage of especially the fertile land. I really like the fact that there's some industry that doesn't pollute. Speaking of pollution, looking at the wind direction, you can see from here that it pulls from right to left, and you can see that we're probably going to start along one of these two peninsulas when we first start building our industry so we don't end up with pollution over in our main city hub. So to start, I'm going to convert this section of Coos River Highway into a four-lane arterial road. So I'm going to take the medium four-lane road, leave all my snapping options on, and I'm going to replace this road here. I notice already that I'm breaking the grid, so I'm going to have to go back and fix that. After plotting out the initial few tiles, I'm going to start with some zoning. Personally, for my starting commercial, I really like to start with the USA Northeast pack. That particular pack has a lot of really nice small town assets that really feel like they could fit in almost anywhere in the United States. And as the complaints from citizens begin raining down, I am going to make sure that we get some utilities connected to the area. So starting out up here, we have an external water connection. We can just hook up like that. And then from an electricity standpoint, we have some high voltage power lines coming in from this side. I'm not going to try and flatten the terrain too much here. So we'll just run it out along this road and over towards the edge of the map. Oh, and it looks like there may be some problem. Not sure what's going on with the water there, but we'll just bulldoze some of the extra pipes and see what we need to do to get them hooked up properly. Oh, this is snapping to the wrong things. This connection not actually reach to the outside of the map. Oh, it doesn't. Wonderful. Okay, so now I don't like to pour sewage into the water to start, so I'm going to cheat and use a little bit of anarchy to run these pipes all the way to the outside of the map. And now that we have water connection to the outside, we can start plopping down some low density US, North American low density housing buildings. We're going to start back a block or two with the low density housing. I generally like to wait to zone in those first couple blocks until after I've unlocked the row housing, because I feel that that's a bit better of a fit. Now while those blocks are all starting to zone in, we can start to develop this area, which we're going to use as our initial plot of land for our industrial development. So we could start out by key-walling the whole thing. That's probably not terribly realistic, considering this is a small town without a ton of development yet. So I'm just going to run this road underneath the 2-lane highway. And go ahead. We also need to run some water and power over. We're going to do that by just putting the pipes underneath the roads. And as far as power is concerned, we'll run one of these rural electric cables up across the road. I'm going to turn anarchy off though, because that can become a pain if we don't. Based on the map and my interests, I'm going to build this city based on a U.S. Northwest city. And I know that under the Biden administration, there was some legislation passed to increase the amount of funding that was put towards semiconductor and chip manufacturing in the states. So I'm going to pretend that this city is being built in an area where we've gotten some funding from the federal government to build chip and electronics manufacturing to try and bring that back to the United States. So we're going to use the switch on factory. We're going to go in to find it. We're going to pull that up. You're going to notice this is a wonderful asset. It's absolutely huge. It's a giant manufacturing plant. And, I feel like developing it here makes a lot of sense. We've got plenty of open land, plenty of open space. So I'm going to redraw in some of the roads to make sure that we have enough space and to make this really the centerpiece of the industrial area. Oh, awesome. We got a tiny village, and we unlocked a bunch of assets that I really want to place. So again, looking at this factory, it's just a gorgeous asset. Modern, but also a massive manufacturing center. It's got tons of jobs. Now, coming back to the start of a downtown, we're going to want to place some of these medium density row houses, North American specifically, so that we can fill out our downtown a little bit. I'm going to leave a couple of cells of separation so we can put some parking behind the assets that would require it. But yeah, generally love using these row houses, especially in an early downtown. Now, as the zoning is filling out, I'm going to want to make some adjustments to what I had said before, and we are going to use some low density housing on the block right behind the downtown area. Want to leave those spots in the end open so that way I can use Picker to add those buildings and those North American assets in a way that faces the direction I'm looking for. Now I'm coming back to look at this the next day, and I want to look at the population and see our unemployment rate. It's really high, so we want to focus on building out our industrial area. Okay. Now, for now, that should have helped a little bit with the unemployment. Yep, I mean, sure, we're still starving, but at least it's not quite as bad. I'm going to fill in some of these edges over here. Help us keep growing the population. So now I'm going to try to do the thing that caused my game to crash so badly earlier and get a garbage dump placed. The problem I ran into was I was using Move It on the garbage dump, and I went and played a little bit too much with the area on it with Move It, and Move It really didn't like that. So the game completely crashed, and had to completely clear my cache, recycle a bunch of things, and eventually I was able to get the whole thing booted. This time I'm going to be a little bit more careful about where I place this and not cheat and use Move It. If I happen to mess up, I'll just delete it and go back to it. See, now I don't love this, but I think I'm probably just going to have to work with it. No. No. No, no. Let's move it out to there. Again, like I said, not going to use any Move It on this one. That was an absolute disaster. Oh, awesome. Milestone 2. Okay. Now, I am going to re-add that, lower that back down. We're going to expand this grid a little bit. Again, 88 by 112 where we can help it. Obviously, we'll change it up a little bit here and there just to try and make some extra extra intrigue so it's not just a very plain grid. And as you can see, I used Elm Street to kind of break up the grid a little bit, but overall keeping it at that constant 112 by 88 grid size. We're starting to see some hearse icons pop up. The hell are we spending all our money on? Apparently, just the garbage depot. Landfill, rather. Okay. Well, we're going to go into our budgets and make some adjustments. Here we go. Yeah, that's a lot. We're going to cut that all the way down. Try and keep us above water. I'm going to take some more of those 1x4s and just plop them along until we get near the end. I want to make sure that there's enough room. I want to make sure that there's enough room for us to place some trees to give them a bit of a buffer. And I also want to add a path running through the middle of the block. We're going to cheat. There we go. I mean, come on. It's barely in the same space. There we go. Give them a little bit of block from the noise of Dale Street running through there, which I'm going to rename at some point, but not quite yet. I'm imagining a small park, maybe a playground there once I unlock them, which, of course, is one of my pet peeves. I really want to be able to place parks this early in the city. Okay, now over here, I'm going to zone in a couple of the Southwest U.S. PAC commercial buildings. Oh, apparently there isn't a 5-wide one there. Okay. And fix this, because otherwise it'll drive me insane. Okay, and now those will have some parking on them. I like that for along a main road as we start to get outside of the heart of town. Eventually we'll replace those, obviously, but okay. So now I'm going to start filling out this area. We've got plenty of residential demand. Actually, let's check our unemployment rate first. Eek. Okay, never mind. Let's go back and look at that for a minute. Oh, I also have enough for parking, so we can unlock parking, and I can finally get some of those placed in this area. Let's see, what's our parking usage? It's not bad. There's a lot of open spots. Okay, we're going to start zoning in, assuming that our unemployment rate has continued to drop. Good enough. Okay. I don't understand why, when the unemployment rate is that high, you can have residential demand, to be honest with you. You would think the availability of jobs would be a major factor for people moving in, but apparently not. I'm thinking I don't want any housing directly facing King Street, but I'm going to zone in some row housing facing Hazelbrook Street. Now coming back over here, just want to fit in a little bit more parking. Yeah, the amount of parking that comes with a lot of these assets is just not realistic. You know what? I know what I want back here. Let's see. We just unlocked one of the signature buildings. There we go. In the leisure venues pack. I want to add a tiny little cafe right there. I think that would be a good amenity for the community, and we'll reserve this as park space, so that way it's got some additional leisure value. In fact, let's put in some paths right now so I don't forget. I think that this block being a hub for some commercial is probably a good idea. It's really a reasonable spot to have some, but I'm not sure that I want to go with the Northeast assets. Those tend to be a little bit larger scale. Let's just go with some vanilla North American. Fill in a couple of... Oh, no, I don't like that. Okay, that I think we can make work. And then I'm going to use the picker to pull this over here. Not sure that I love that asset, but in an automotive-centric community, that makes sense. Okay. Starting to see enough ambulance signs pop up that I think it's time. Even if it may bankrupt us. Let's start with this small medical clinic just to try and keep the cost down. Now, again, I'm going to try and pick a spot that wouldn't be too popular for housing to get developed. Right there, trying to keep it off of the arterial. Awesome. Well, you know what? That could have been worse. Oh, I also need to bump the taxes up a couple percent just to try and keep it a little bit more balanced. Okay. Now, you know what? While we're at it, while we're blowing up the budget, we really do need an elementary school. I don't want to place something that grand. I think that this is probably a good fit. Yeah, and then I'll have enough space once we unlock parks. I can get that large playground, plop that behind, give the kids a little bit of space to play. I also love this asset because it's got a small footprint and gets a ton of students, but it also doesn't look like it has to be super urban. In fact, the only thing that bothers me about it that makes it look like it's urban is the surface, so we're going to remove that and place one of our own. I know this asset isn't particularly American, but we can definitely improve that by, well, adding some parking. Awesome. And we'll, like I said, we'll add a playground, maybe an additional park back behind it, and we'll do that once we unlock parks, since we don't get them till milestone 4. Okay, so now I'm going to go into my services because this is very bad. We're going to drop the education budget for now. I know it's going to kill the education facilities for now, but yeah, early in the game. Oh man, that is god awful color. Let's try and pick something a little bit milder. There we go. I just can't. Not with that. Okay. So now moving up into the development up in this area. I do want to have one medium density northeast or North American residential, and then we'll add a little bit of parking. That's going to be a little bit tall for town, but yeah, so. Said, I think I'll reserve this block because it's a little oddly shaped for a park. I am going to add another medium density housing unit down here because I think that that is a reasonable thing to request near a school. We'll add some row houses here. Add a few small row houses here. Okay. I don't know, that's a little tall. Okay, well, let's cut down the size one. See if we can get something a little bit more appropriate. And do the same over here, because it's also going to grow in very large. See, that's exactly what I want. I want the front to be facing Elm Street. There we go. Awesome. Now we'll wait a little bit for those to zone in. Make sure that that develops up nicely, and we can go back to look at the population screen. Here we are. Okay. Plenty of open jobs, even if the unemployment rate's a little high. So that's not really a big deal. Awesome. In terms of reserving right of way, I think I'm going to save. Oh, awesome. Milestone 3. Getting closer and closer. Oh, and the Riverside Grill. Exactly what we want. Okay. But I think I'm going to reserve this area for a train station of sorts, a transit hub at some point. Obviously, maybe not the most realistic that they're reserving land like that for a transit hub in an American-themed build, but it's not all that important. I also really like the way that this turned out compared to these. I find that they're a little bit too monotonous, so I think I'm gonna add some extra on the edges, bulldoze a little bit, and see if we can get that to zone in a little bit more interestingly. Now, despite the fact that we are hemorrhaging money, we are going to grab a fire station and a police station, and I'm not going to use the fire service blocks because that's cheating. Cheating beyond what I'm willing to do. You know what? We already broke up this block. Rosemead is already acting as more of a collector. So let's remove the housing. And we can add the fire station. Coming back to look. As far as the scale of these medium density buildings, that's much more what I'm looking for. Yeah, that's a lot better. Awesome. Okay, so now along this street, thinking we'll just zone in some additional low density housing. There we go. Again, waiting for parks. And then over here we'll do the same. Awesome. Yeah, a little bit more variety in there. Okay, as far as expense goes, yeah, we're looking okay on service trade. I mean, that's not so insane. Maybe if there's a spot where we could fit a good wind turbine. Apparently, everywhere is 5 megawatts over here. We'll have one right there. We'll end up moving that eventually, but just to cut into our trade upkeeps, that's probably a good place to start. So awesome, awesome, a lot of activity. Let's remove these traffic lights. Not a spot that needs them. Now I am going to extend the grid a little bit further just to try and incorporate all of this land out here. But there really isn't much more to add because we're kind of nearing the end of this initial grid. I think that we could add some low density housing. Again, I'm just going to block that in. I like having a little bit of randomness. And then what can we do over here? We're going to have to plop something. Let's see what we have in the way of. Riverside Grill is way too large. Doesn't make sense to have in a low visibility spot like that either. I always had a small petrol station. I just looked at that. Emo can do. Yeah, I like it. Perfect. I mean, yeah, sure, having a pub right there doesn't make sense. Maybe we're going to say it's for the 50 teachers that work there, not for the elementary school students. Let's add some larger UK asset estates all the way out here, since this is all the way out on the fringes. Now, I am going to give this King Street another pass. No, I don't want to pause, because I think that this is just a matter of bringing that back. Oh, uh-oh. Hopefully, yep, there it is. Complete disconnect on my water line. Didn't even think about that. That is why I like to not pause it, though, because that gives me a little bit of additional challenge. Oh, is that an electricity line that he ran all the way in here? That is, isn't it? If only I'd been paying attention. Okay. And we're going to bring that up the hill. A similar path, but not quite the same one it was taken before. Oh, let's remove snap to existing geometry. I saw in a skills builds video that if you see that you're snapping to nothing and you're having trouble with that, it often has to do with the underground pipes. So, yeah, he's an awesome creator. Love watching his stuff. Okay, now we can add just a little bit more in the way of connections. That's a little bit too steep to have a connection with a road that's going to be bringing in that much traffic. So we can leave it as is for now. think that's enough. And then I'm going to build up some row houses up against this road, up against Hazelbrook Street. Oh, there's the autosave again. And then we will add, let's see, I want to add a line of trees back here to try and protect them from the noise. Okay, perfect. I do need to do some research on what kind of trees they have out here, but poplar added some spruce, so I am willing to add them too. Okay. Now southwest. I'll add a couple of southwest assets there. I really want to have a town like this where you've got a major manufacturer. There are going to be people that come through on business, and right now we really don't have a hotel. And I don't think it's going to spawn one in for us. I find that generally my hotels go bankrupt all the time. I'm going to ignore that, but for this level 5 hotel, very much feels reminiscent of like a Best Western. So I really love that asset, and I'm going to place that. And in addition to placing that, I'm actually going to see, with anarchy off. Can I? No, I can't squeeze anything in there. Okay. I am going to try and squeeze in a parking lot. Turn off snapping. Awesome. Okay, so now this building, okay, nobody has actually opened up shop there, but I like the idea of having one on the way into town. Probably makes more sense to have one on the other side of town, but that spot's already developed. We've already built the roads. We've already built the utility infrastructure, so we're going to keep it over here. Awesome. Now this is an asset that I also love to use, and the full emo can do, but I really want to use the pub. Let's get to the Heath Pub. I think that this snaps. Okay, so it probably makes a little bit more sense on the side of one of these, but that particular block will not work. I am going to move on to doing some detailing while we wait for the parks. So what I've done here is I've just added some framing with flowers. Eventually we may replace those parts of the lot with more buildings like Fleur de Fay. And then I've also added some seating in the middle, so that way if you went and got your tea or coffee, I'm going to go with coffee. If you went and got your coffee, you could go and sit down in the sun and enjoy the nice weather in front of the fountain. Now moving on to the block with the UK Parish Church, there are going to be some challenges because obviously we can't work inside of this this barrier because eventually when we add upgrades, that's going to end up filling up. So I am going to instead add paths on the outside to frame it, and that'll kind of give us an idea of where the barriers are that we can't I've done a similar thing here where I've added a bunch of additional shrubbery. Like I said, have to avoid the footprint of the building until it's upgraded. I don't want to detail it and have all that go to waste. So for now, just going to leave it as is. Oh, autosave. We're getting very close to milestone 4. So looking at our signature buildings, that can be a good way for us to bump up here. I don't know. I guess I could add this. I'm sure there's a decent spot for it even. Let's add it right there. Perfect. That got us to milestone 4, which gets us parks, which means we can do some of the final detailing that we'll need to do. Holy crap, we got a lot of buildings. But I think that overall that's a pretty good fit. So it's a good spot for it. Excellent. So now, moving on to actually adding our real parks, I'm going to start out by immediately going in and using a bunch of points on park maintenance, large parks, and sports parks, because I can't help myself. So I'm basically out of development points already. So going into the large parks, this is where we have our large playground, which is the asset we're going to place at the foot of the school. We're also going to see, I don't think that we do have, oh, I guess we do have enough space. We're also going to add a basketball court. I know that all the schools I went to growing up had, even if it was just inside a parking lot, had some basketball court for us to play at. Now, over in this lot, we're going to go back to the large parks. And I like the dog activity park, but I don't think it's a great fit. So we're going to go to city parks. And I'm going to pretend that this fits. There we go. Because this is one of my favorite parks. I love it for early on in a city. I feel like it's rural enough that it makes sense that it's there, but it's not so, so rural that you can't understand why I plopped it in the middle of my town. So we're going to put that park there, and we'll come back and add some stuff to it and do some additional detailing. And then, additionally, we can go ahead and add a park right there. And like I said, we'll come back. We'll extend those paths, do some additional detailing. This park, I don't know if we have the asset that I want yet for that. Oh, no, we do. Excellent. So I want to take this asset right here. This is the hedge park. I like it a lot. I really like the way that this park looks inside of a lot. So I'm going to add that there for now. Again, we'll come back and branch out on some paths as we get there. Again, ignore the budget. Everything's fine. Okay. So now I'm going to start over here and start doing some additional detailing on the parks themselves. Awesome. As you can see, looks great during the night. Most of the paths are very well lit, and during the day, you can see that we have a very pretty, very green park in the middle of what is really just a suburb right now. Okay, so now moving on to this park south of the school. Um, oh, I forgot. We can also add some low density office if we need, but for the time being, I think we need low employment requirement jobs. But for this park, we are going to, again, similar pattern. We're going to extend the paths, add the lighting, add some benches, and this one we'll probably leave a little bit more open. Just some low shrubbery. I decided to add some extra flower bushes and everything around this park. I like to include a lot of flowers in my builds generally, so yeah, I placed a bunch of flowers out loosely, and then I used Anarchy to individually place some inside of the actual park asset to make it a little bit more colorful, a little bit more bright. Especially with a couple of parks already available, a 2-minute walk away. I think it's nice to give this park something a little bit unique so that people want to come to it. Now, as far as this park is concerned, this one's going to be pretty simple. I'm just going to connect to some of the paths that are in the building. So I went through, added some picnic tables around the schoolyard. I figured that would be an amenity both for the kids and for the teachers when they're on their lunch break. I also added um, a different surface to a large playground, swapped out the surface on the basketball court, and kind of connected it. I can try and connect it using an invisible net lane, but I'm not entirely sure if this is one of the. Oh, it is. Excellent. I think I can. Awesome. Yeah. So that should allow pedestrians to walk between the two buildings freely. So excellent. That gets us to done with those couple of blocks. Now we need to come down to this one. This is going to be one of the larger parks in the core of the new city, so I want to make sure that we give it plenty of thought. I really like the fact that we have a soundstage up here with some of these parks and park tables and benches. And I'm almost inclined to add a second one closer towards the downtown. Um, like an A and a B stage, although I don't think that that's really all that realistic, so we may leave it as is. But I definitely want to connect some paths so people can come walking through it. I may add some additional seating in the center of the hedge park. Okay, I'm not going to add any lighting to this park because when we zoom in and look a little bit closer, it doesn't look like there's much built into the asset, so I'm going to leave that as is. Uh, Also, not going to add too many benches. This is going to be mostly a walking park, but I've added some oak trees along with the London planes that are built into the asset. I'm going to clear out one of these low density blocks. I'm kind of regretting not leaving myself any green space in the middle of the city and sticking it all on the outsides and on the fringes. So I just want to clear out one of these blocks so that we have some additional green space. I just noticed we have a forest fire rolling in, so we're going to keep an eye on that, make sure that that doesn't get too close to the town. Seeing as it's likely to run right up to it, just check our budget on the fire department because I really don't want the entire town to burn down. Okay, we're still at 100%. However, we're going to drop the police budget because we really don't need that many police officers in a town this small. So, one last area that I want to work on before I end this episode is I would like to build out the grid a little bit on this side of this arterial coming into town. I think that having all that flat land right across from a major road makes sense to develop that in the first episode. So I'm going to start out by placing down our starting grid, a couple of roads to break up the starting grid, and yeah, then we'll develop from there. So I am right now waiting for things to zone in, but I've zoned in some commercial and office along with a couple of low rent French buildings. Love the low rent French assets. I also decided to plop a couple over here. I'm going to turn this into an apartment complex. Um, just a small one, but uh, yeah, so having an apartment complex over here along with some low density housing here. Um, and eventually we'll turn this small lake into a park of sorts. Not this episode though. And now we're just going to wait for the last few buildings to zone in. Okay, now that all of the buildings are zoned in, we're probably going to leave these blocks empty for now. We'll develop them in a later episode. But I'm going to go through, add some extra foliage, add some extra details in some of the blocks, empty out, take some of these empty lots and at least fill them with trees, so that way we don't have these big empty lots, and add some additional trees throughout the map that I feel we need. I think we're going to call it an end to this episode now. This one got a little away from me, ran a little bit longer than I normally want it to, but I do like to get to the point where I can place those parks, and then once I do that, I want to do some additional detailing, etc. Um, in the next episode, we're probably going to be developing some more of this industrial area because our unemployment rate is incredibly high. Additionally, we're going to deal with the consequences of this giant forest fire that's coming down towards the city. Maybe expand the downtown area a little bit over here where we're going to have our transit hub at some point. But like I said, if you stuck with me, I really appreciate it, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.